We will now look at the role attitudes and values play in free and accessible education. It has been shown time and again that teachers' positive attitudes towards free and accessible education depend strongly on their experience with learners who are perceived as challenging. And these are what we would call the brats in the classroom. And I can tell you, the brats in the classroom are the best kids. It's those kids that bring life to a classroom. They provide a challenge, and it is up to the teacher to make sure that that is not seen as a problem child, as a child to be separated from the classroom, as a child to be sent to the principal's office. This is a child presenting an opportunity for a teacher in the classroom to work with that child. So when teachers themselves have positive attitudes about these so-called problematic children in the classroom, free and accessible education will get to that child also. Teacher education, the availability of support within the classroom, class size, and overall workload are all factors which influence teachers' attitudes. How many classes a day am I supposed to teach? What is my class size, 20 versus 45? What is the support I have in the classroom? Do I have technology? Do I have help from the virtual world? Do I have charts and posters and games and things I can involve students in and make their learning experiences worthwhile for them? So all these elements will help the teacher frame his or her attitude towards these problematic students. Several studies have revealed that negative attitudes of teachers and adults, parents and other family members are the major barrier to inclusion of marginalized students. Children do not have prejudices unless adults show them. A child is free. A child is clear. A child is like a blank slate. The child learns from what he sees teachers, parents, adults in the society do. So negative attitudes of teachers hamper the growth of children, especially challenged, marginalized, so-called problematic students in our classrooms. If teachers changed their own attitudes and became more accepting of the students, I think they would be more successful than we might want to believe. Thus, introducing inclusion of all as a guiding principle in these different areas will have implications for teachers' attitudes. When by policy or school dictates that the student is there, we will take these students in, it negatively impacts the teacher's perception, because now the teacher thinks, I never asked for this student in my classroom. The school administration accepted the child and now has thrown the child in my classroom. I'm not responsible for this child. This attitude needs to change. Shared values make cooperation possible, just as lack of them makes it difficult for people to work together. If we have the same values, if all people in education believed that all children need a good, solid education, need to be part of our education system, free and accessible, no matter where they come from, that's a value. If all teachers valued it, I think all students in our classrooms would benefit differently than, unfortunately, some are currently benefiting. Changes in attitudes involve significant changes in conceptions and role behavior. Once our mindset changes, once our attitudes change, then our conceptions of how we see things change, and once that changes, our behaviors towards previously unacceptable elements in our classrooms would also change for the positive, for the better. Negative attitudes towards differences and resulting discrimination and prejudice in society manifests itself as a serious barrier to students' learning. If a child is made fun of because the child is fat or obese, or the child is made fun of because, unfortunately, he was struck by polio, and when these children are made fun of, they develop a negative perception of themselves. And when you don't think positively about yourself, you don't learn that much. You just simply believe that it's not worth it. Why should one spend the time and effort when everybody around you thinks you are not good at all? However, it is a barrier that can be overcome through the practice of inclusion and is not a necessary precursor to the process. But if teachers and also other students became accepting of these special children, I think life in the classroom would be much, much better. The implementation of more inclusive systems of education is possible if schools themselves are committed to becoming more inclusive. Sometimes, the admission process of the school is such that it automatically debars a lot of young children from getting admission in those schools. A lot of times, it's the parents who see the kind of children coming to school and think, oh, no, this school is not for my child. And so parents walk away. So either way, whether it is from the school side or the parent side, somebody has to step in and say, this must be inclusive. All children must receive good quality education. And for this, I think the main step comes from policies. Our policy makers will have to ensure our school, especially in the private sector, our school owners will have to understand that any child is welcome in a school or should be. Local support systems and appropriate forms of curriculum and assessment are important in creating the right context for the development of inclusion. As I said earlier, in the teaching process, one size fits all is not going to work. Similarly, in the assessment process, it's not going to work. These special children, these marginalized children, these problematic children will have to be dealt with in a different way. So the kind of curriculum we teach them, the kind of assessments we do with them will also need to be different and therefore change. Only then will inclusion work. Otherwise, if we do it one way for everybody, many children will automatically be excluded, and that is not what inclusive education should be all about. Free and accessible education has important benefits for all children as it produces schools with more enriching learning environments that view diversity as a positive force which must be acknowledged and celebrated. So again, celebrating the diversity in terms of the special children, in terms of the lower income group children, in terms of religious backgrounds, in terms of traditions and communities you come from, in terms of the socio-economic status, all this diversity needs to be celebrated. And it can be celebrated only if schools are free and accessible. In schools that charge, this cannot happen. Inclusion produces schools that move away from rote learning and place greater emphasis on hands-on, experience-based, active and cooperative learning. So, rote learning, learning by heart, memorizing everything is not part of inclusive education. If education is to be inclusive truly in any school, the child will have to be involved, engaged, on task, doing things rather than simply reading and writing about things.